Oh.
So, fight for 15, Ricky. Love it, hate it.
The big 1-5. Well, you kind of know how I feel. I'd be okay with 0. 0 I'd be okay with.
Why would you be okay with 0?
We talked about this, Brian. You and me have talked about it. We've had plenty of sauna sessions where we've talked about it.
Okay. And many people have looked onto us very weirdly. What
your worth is.
True.
You get what your worth is.
True.
And that's my point. That's like that should be it.
I would
wipe the table, Brian.
I would
wipe the table.
I would put the caveat on you're only worth you're worth what your labor is worth.
Yes.
So
if your labor isn't worth $15,
but why isn't it worth $15?
Because what you do can be replaced by machine, or what you do doesn't earn more than $15 an hour.
Or you can be replaced by immigrants. That's one you gotta look at that as well. So automation, things like but that's the thing though. Like you look at most of these like I remember when they were trying to do all these different rollouts and things like at various companies, and they were trying to automate some of it, especially like case in point McDonald's. They were trying to have like those little kiosks and things like that,
which they do.
They obviously, they do, especially in various foreign countries. They obviously do have kiosks and things just to make things, more efficient. But most people in the United States don't want to order their food by a machine.
I'm okay with ordering it.
Well, yeah, you're okay with it, but
I don't think that bothers them. I don't think that bothers them too much. I think that we're gonna adapt. Things are consistently going to change, and so my point is that you just have to continue to learn, improve yourself, gain knowledge, gain skills, gain talents, whatever. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, but you also understand that we live in a political climate as well, because we looked up about 20 states that have
21 in 2020, and then one is moving up from 725 to 9 something. So this year 20 states are at the federal minimum wage. The rest are above. Most of them are between most of them are between like 9 and 12.
Yeah.
Most of them are between 9 and 12 anyway. Yeah. So,
but the big thing is, in most of these states where the minimum wage has been raised, it hasn't been through the legislature. It's been through referendums. So the people obviously want the minimum wage to go up. And so do you give the people what they want, or do you say go pound sand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
because there are political consequences for not raising the minimum wage.
Yeah, I mean, there's consequences for everything you do, and at the end of the day, it won't completely make or break anything. It will put some struggle on some small businesses. You have $30, and you pay each of your employees $10 an hour, and you're only your budget is to pay $30 an hour for your work, and so all of a sudden 15 and 15. Oh, who's out? So Johnny's out. Bye, Johnny. Or you can say, okay, now we're going to actually just cut down all of your hours, and you're going to make the same thing as before, but you work less. Mm-hmm. But you have to have the same production, or else the company suffers. Yeah. So it's like, all right.
Or the company just slightly raises prices on some of their goods and services.
Oh, you mean inflation, Brian? You mean when people raise the prices of goods and services, and so then it's like, oh, that minimum wage worker, their dollar won't purchase as much as it did before? Is that what you mean, Brian?
In a way.
It is.
Small businesses definitely will be hurt, but you look at the macro picture. If McDonald's raises their Big Mac 10 cents, they stand to gain it's not that big of a hit.
Yeah. I mean, that might be true. I mean, it's probably different for the people that aren't like selling 100 burgers an hour or whatever they do. Yeah. When they're serving 5 burgers an hour, it's a bigger deal. But I guess something of note was that the last time it was raised was in 2009, came up to $7.25. I remember because in high school it was like five something.
Like 5, yeah.
So $7.25. So if you were to keep up with inflation till now, it would be $10-ish. So I was like, all right. And so if they're planning on raising it to 15 by 2024, it would end up being like it'd probably be $12 or something.
Yeah. But to your argument, I believe that for one, that a lot of this should be left to states and localities. Because like look at Chicago. Like Chicago plans to raise their minimum wage in the next 3 years or something. And there's various other places like we saw that the only place in the United States where it's $15 an hour is a place that's not a state, and it's DC.
Oh shoot! Yeah.
So it's like
well, it's because you can't. I mean, those places you can't really live in DC without
making that
much money.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. I mean. Shoot, parts of California and
California, I think it's like 12,
and New York, those places you're not going to be able to live on less than that.
Yeah,
but you're also like no one's forcing you to live on that. Like, don't live in Manhattan if you can only make minimum wage.
True.
Unless you want to live with like 15 other young dudes from different countries, all making $15 an hour,
showering
and
together.
then just. I won't go where I want to go with it, but you know what I'm saying. So everybody pots it together.
Yeah.
It has a little community, and they eat rats. So you can do that if you want.
A lot of them in New York.
You can do that.
Yeah.
But just like why? You could go to Kansas and live all right.
Yeah. Well, and
I lived in Oklahoma. I lived in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I made $13 an hour. My wife made $12 an hour. We lived fine.
Yeah.
We lived fine.
Yeah.
It's because we lived in a reasonably priced place.
Yeah.
And it's like, we both had cruddy little cars that got us around. We did all right,
Yeah.
It's like, granted we didn't have kids, but...
Yeah. And, there are several states, I think we saw that, like, Louisiana, Tennessee, I think Idaho doesn't have a state minimum wage. So, there are places that don't have minimum wage and, aren't directly affected by...
Well, yeah, their own state minimum wage. Like we're talking, everybody's under the federal minimum wage, so you can go no lower than $7.25. You can only go higher.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I don't know that it'll make or break anything, but it's a weird time to do it because of the huge strain that's been put on small businesses at this time. It's like. Small businesses are just barely staying afloat, just trying to breathe.
Well,
and then all of a sudden you're putting this on them. It's like,
can
I get a break?
You
don't let me open for a year, and then you're going to raise minimum wage?
Well, that goes back to your point. The federal government intervened so massively in 2020 that the inflation rate was barely 0.6%. It was 6.2% in 2020. Like that's way under what you would think productivity would be for the United States, especially a major industrialized country. But it goes to the point that should the state, the government, should it really be interfering in these basically what is essentially agreements between companies and employees?
Yeah.
Like, because let's say, 500 years ago, some rich person would come up to a bunch of peasants and say, hey, you worked my land, I give you, food, or I give you...
This is the deal.
And that exchange was, obviously it was definitely an imbalance of power relationship because it's a noble person asking peasants to work his land. And even, up until 100 years ago, you have some person to open a factory and say, hey, all you, freshly immigrants, I'm going to pay you $1 an hour to work in my factory. And, $1 a day for some of these people was a substantial amount of money from, coming from the old country being, where you're living on like bread and
Yeah,
turnips.
so in an area where there are so limited resources, that's definitely something of note. But it's like in the United States where there's a free market where you can, you can have whatever business you want, wherever you want. like you can go somewhere else, or you can interview and then get a job, and then you can get an offer, and you go to your job and say, hey, they're offering me this, am I worth this to you? Because if not, I'm going there.
Well, you know, I would say even in the new gig economy that we have now, that we're even past that point where you don't even have to move to get a new job.
No, yeah, I mean,
you know, it's just like how many people are working from home now?
Yeah,
you know, and that's. You know, and I have a few buddies that they have 3 jobs. They work at home. They work a few hours a day, and you know they make about $50,000.
Yeah,
just from working a few hours a day for about 4 or 5 days a week.
At the end of the day, I don't know that it will change much. It sounds nice, it might get some votes, but at the end of the day, I don't know that it's actually going to change a whole lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
It actually might make some people's lives worse.
Yeah.
So, again, it's like...
Yeah.
It's a political move. I don't know
that football because people, even Ronald Reagan was saying that the minimum wage should be tied to inflation. Like, so you take it completely off the table. It doesn't become this political football and things like that. Where if the inflation is 1%, guess what? Your wage is going to go up 1%. It's not going to be this constant, let's raise it, $2 in 5 years or something. Is like, no, like you were going to raise it proportional to what the inflation is. And I think, obviously looking back at 2020 and I believe another down year, 2015, like, guess what? Your wage isn't going to go up that much. So, and that's what it should have been for the last, 2 decades. It should